Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 821. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now!
A.K.A. Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. Tonight, for your kind consideration, we're talking about badging versus full partners. We're going to be talking about Honda. We're going to be talking about those greedy teams in Formula One. Oh, we're going to have another launch update, and we're going to talk about the FIA and Eddie. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But before doing that on podcast 821, I have to just introduce my co-host tonight, which of course means, that's right, I got to go all the way to the right coast of our nation, nestled in our nation's capital, where she plies her skills as a master statistician. And I'm almost convinced now the U.S. government wouldn't work if Grace didn't go in on a daily basis and do her job. So that's, just thank Grace that the government working for you. So you know her, you love her, the lovely, the redoubtable Grace. Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Good. I see you're representing today because now if you're newer to the podcast, you'll know I live in St. Louis, but I was born and raised in Kansas City. And once you are born and raised in Kansas City, you can't get the red out of your blood. So you're a lifelong Chiefs fan. And yes, I suffered through 3 or 4 decades, 4 decades of mediocrity with the Chiefs. So I'm pretty excited, but back in the late 70s, Grace, the Chiefs were so bad that we used to go to Arrowhead and sit out in the freezing cold with warm apple cider, drinking that just to see the amazing Franco Harris come and play.
Wow, for sure. I mean,
Yep.
I was going to say I'm in a similar situation, right? Born and raised outside of Pittsburgh, Steelers fan, but I live in DC. Although there's a lot of Steelers fans here, and that's always funny because the Washington football team, people really don't like Dan Snyder, the owner. So often if they're playing the Steelers, there'll be more Steelers fans at the stadium than there will be, I almost called them their old name, the Washington football team. I haven't adapted to Commanders. That's just a weird name. I like WTF was great. Washington football team, right? Fine. WFT.
That is good.
So anyway, nonetheless, I hear you. As a Steelers fan, I definitely suffered through my entire childhood as not so great years. And I had a friend when I got married because Flip is a Ravens fan and the Steelers and the Ravens fans, right? And so I had a friend that was like, oh yeah, when I got married to my husband, we had, I don't remember what teams they supported, but they both gave up their team and picked the Ravens, right? They picked a joint team. And I said, I didn't live through the Bubby Brister years and the Neil O'Donnell years to give up on the Steelers now that we're successful. I'm like, he has to give up. So, we've kept our, allegiances separate. So,
well, I got a lot of, appreciation for the Steelers. That was, when I was a little kid, I played football and then all the way up through in high school, and I was a running back. And so when I was little, I was always number 32, Franco Harris. I love him, and Walter Payton Sweetness, and those were kind of inspirations for running backs at the time. But anyway, so I have a lot of fondness for the Steelers. But yeah, diehard Chiefs fan. Today we're recording a day early because I'm going to be out of town next week, and the Super Bowl is tonight, Sunday night. And so I'm excited. I'm not feeling really confident. I'll be honest with you. We're pretty banged up over on the Chiefs side. Mahomes is pretty banged up. Our receivers are banged up, and the Eagles are a great team. And so fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
I'm just here for the Rihanna concert, so it's fine.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, Grace, there was some F1 news this week.
There was, because as we tick each week closer and closer, we get a little more news, right? The dark days of no news are behind us.
I know, the days of just kind of like, no news. Those days are coming to an end.
Yeah.
Because now we're into the car launch, so-called time, and then we're into testing very soon. And so that's going to be exciting. And I haven't done one of my season preview. I mean, not podcasts. Here in St. Louis, each year I used to do a live event, a season preview. And there's some wonderful, wonderful F1 fans here in St. Louis, and some dear friends, Eric and everybody that Alex and everybody that would find a place that would hold, 100 120 people, whatever it was. But, and, I do a presentation and I set the table for the season. They're always so much fun. And I haven't done one of those in a few years. So, but hopefully we may be trying to do one again. So I'll keep all you St. Louis fans posted. But they're always fun.
I was going to add too, that Chat GP, right, is all the rage, right? Using AI to answer questions and predict things and write essays. There's a content creator, Brake F1. He was a former Red Bull engineer. I can't remember his name. I guess that's the downside of having a handle is I remember your handle because that's what I search for you for, and I don't remember your name, right? But anyway, he put who was going to win the 2020, what was going to be the Constructors Championships for 2023. Yeah, Alpine came in second. So if anything is a testament to maybe the AI is not quite all there yet. That was great. I can't remember, like Ferrari or somebody was first, like somebody totally believable, but Alpine
second.
I don't think so.
I mean, hey, I don't want to knock it. That's great. I'd be excited if they were, but for them, I don't see that happening.
Not how Formula One works, but it was just like, maybe you're not ready for prime time yet.
Formula One's one of those sports where, there's a lot of other sports, just like this game today, the Super Bowl, it's that concept of any given Sunday, you just never know with football, somebody could have had a dodgy curry last night and they're feeling bad today. You never know. But it doesn't really, and Formula One isn't really any given Sunday.
Oh, no. It's like, it's not even any given year, really.
No, it's almost any given period of domination.
Any given 5 to 10 year stretch.
Yeah, right. Any given regulation set.
Yes, exactly. It's a bit of a longer haul there.
So if you're an F1 fan and you're tuning in because you're expecting prolific passing and any given Sunday kind of appeal, you're going to be disappointed a little bit. You got to think of it as a long term. You're in for the long game on F1.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there you go. So anyway, some news out of Formula One this week. Badging or full partner is my headline. Now, we've spoken a lot about Audi, Porsche, Honda, Ford, and Cadillac in recent episodes. And while the subject may not be that riveting, to listeners, it is playing a huge part in the off-season drama. It really is. It may not seem like a big deal, but it's a massive deal in Formula One. And you'll recall that Red Bull, who walked away from a Porsche deal, recently announced Ford as their new technical partner for the 2026 season when the engine regulations change. And many were wondering if this was simply a badging exercise or if Ford were truly making an F1 engine for Red Bull. What would that look like? I think the press release at the time, Grace, alluded to Ford's EV technology being a possible use. But what I found interesting, though, imagine, if you will, so Red Bull's making their own ICE, their internal combustion engine, their own engine. And so to have Ford come in and bring their EV technology would be a big boost for them because that's one thing that Honda is providing currently for them. And so that would be a big boost. Now, I think that's what the press release sort of alluded to, but there was an article by Adam Cooper over at Motorsport that I found. It's sort of a very interesting twist. And Adam's a good guy. I've met him. I've only met him once, and he was a nice guy. He was in Austin, a nice guy, and he does a great job. But and it said over there that the special arrangement for new suppliers were agreed upon as part of the package to encourage new manufacturers like Audi to join the sport in 2026. In essence, they are allowed extra spending power and extra dyno time relative to the established manufacturers in the build-up to the introduction of the new regulations. So new suppliers can spend an extra $10 million in 2023, an extra $10 million in 2024, and an extra $5 million in 2025 than the already established manufacturers of engines, and within the areas covered by the cost cap. Now, they can also deploy an additional 15 million in total capital expenditures over that period of time, meaning equipment, machinery to build these engines, et cetera. So you're saying, no, wait a minute. Now, why? Okay, so why would Porsche or Audi or those new manufacturers of the sport get that money? And presumably Honda would be one of them. And that's because the idea or the concept, and I don't think it necessarily applies to Honda because Honda is making the current engine, right? So Porsche or Audi would be brand new to this sort of hybrid F1 engine. And
like
so, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it's like new driver Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And rookie driver Fernando.
Right.
So F1 is saying that, well, look, in order to help these manufacturers who haven't been making F1 engines since 2014,
right?
In order to hit the ground running and to be competitive, we're going to allow them to spend more money each year and more dyno time and build the infrastructure needed to make these engines.
Right.
So that's why the rule is in there, and it does make sense. But it seems that Ferrari have questioned Red Bull's ties to Honda and Honda's intellectual property around their power unit. But Red Bull Powertrains is a completely new engine supplier, according to Christian Horner. And he says they have very limited access to Honda and their intellectual property. Now, what's interesting is that, as Adam points out, the FIA have reserved the right to change that new manufacturer program as they see fit. And it said, quote, this is an FIA quote, it says, if following a review of the requested documentation, the FIA determines that a PU, a power unit manufacturer, does not fully satisfy the necessary conditions, the FIA reserves the right at its absolute discretion to grant the PU manufacturer a partial new PU manufacturer status. Partial new PU manufacturer status. So, and this will give rise to a reduction of the additional rights accorded to a new PU manufacturer by the technical, sporting, and financial regulations. So, as Adam Cooper points out in the article, he gives this example. He says that the regulations could consider Red Bull only a partially new program, because the team currently assembles the ERS battery packs for the Honda engines. And so this means that they would lose $1 million of program money in 23, $1 million in 24, and $500,000 in 2025 from the aforementioned program. So it's interesting that you see Ferrari, established manufacturer, Mercedes, established manufacturer, Renault, established manufacturer. They're all going to look at Red Bull and say, what
are you doing? Yeah. Who do you think you are?
Right. So, and it was led by Ferrari, suggesting that, wait a minute, they're using Honda engines. And Red Bull's like, no. We have a completely different company called Red Bull Powertrain that's making our own engines, and we make our own. And the thought here, as Adam points out, well, no, wait a minute, you're just assembling battery packs, for these engines. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And if I'm Ferrari or if I'm Mercedes, I would put heat on them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, that's doing due diligence. So to me, I see this story as like, what's that line between good planning and cheating, right? Like there's some space between what Red Bull as a company, as we all should be doing in project management, which is planning for every contingency. Contingency 1, Honda stays. Contingency 2, Honda doesn't stay, right? So they can play both of those contingencies. Because what actually happened was Honda was leaving. We got a new guy in charge. Guess what? We're coming back, right? Which happens, right? So one way you could see this is as it's good planning. Red Bull saw that this possibility of Honda being flaky, which has happened before.
Yeah,
and any manufacturer, right? That we always use Renault as the example, right? Carlos Sainz took over. We're not in Formula One anymore. He got ousted, and now we're back. So manufacturers come in and out like that. So the other side of that is that, of course, Ferrari and Mercedes and Renault are going to say, oh, we have some questions, because that's they're doing their due diligence, right? That's them doing their good planning, right? So because Formula One is always about trying to find the loophole, right? If you aren't, it's kind of, we all quote that Senna, like if you aren't going for the gap, you're no longer a race car driver. Like if you aren't looking for loopholes, what are you doing in this sport, right? You're no longer going to be a successful team. And especially at that level where they have people, that's their whole job, is to like pour over these vague rules, because the rules are always written sort of vague, and finding where things fit in. So I did want to give a shout out, because I think if people wanted to dig more into specifically the Red Bull Honda conspiracy and where that goes, the race put out a really great video led by our friend of the show, Scott Mitchell Mom, that really nicely lays out kind of like what people are saying, and how it's not quite as conspiracy against Red Bull as we want it to be. I also really like they had a very nice use of graphics and icons, which is a world I live in. So it's a very nice visual.
So they
video.
Mitchell Mommed it.
They did Mitchell Mom it. It's very nice. But so I think that, don't get me wrong, I love a good conspiracy, right? Especially about Red Bull, because they're jerk faces, and I love a good Red Bull conspiracy. But I just don't think it's there. I think that they did due diligence. They had several contingencies. Everybody knew about the engine freeze. I just think that this was you knew about it. And so I think it's just both sides kind of have to do their due diligence. And then the other side of that is at the end of the day, and again, this is something that came up in a race video, that when Red Bull started as a team, everybody's like, you make drinks. What do you know about racing? Here we are again. You're a team that makes beverages. What do you know about X? Well, apparently they know something about X, because they've been in the sport for a long time. They've been really successful. And here they are now going against what is a manufacturer. How do I get some of that sweet extra money in that dyno time that you mentioned at the beginning of your story? How do I get that? They seem to be just fine, even though they're just an energy drink company that doesn't know how to do anything, right?
Right.
Now, that seems to not be true yet again. And I think that, long story short, if they were a team I liked, I could totally get behind this. I think they've just played the game very well in a way that the other teams didn't.
Yeah.
And so of course the other teams are going to be like, we don't like this. Of course.
Yeah, of course. No, I think you're spot on, Grace. I think in the case of Red Bull, underestimate them as an energy company at your own risk. I mean, this is now we're 6 championships later with this team.
Right.
And they got
those ones with.
Yeah, it's beyond an energy drinks company.
Yeah, those ones with Vettel came really early on in their career too, so
right.
I just think it'll be interesting. I think 2026 is really where like that is going to hit the fan, right? So because 2026 is when we'll find out, are they a constructor, right? What does that mean?
Can they make an engine?
Right. And so I think, much like we were talking about how Formula One isn't any given Sunday, it's the opposite, any given year. So this is another one of those any given years. So kind of like put a pin in it. We'll see what 2026 brings, because that's when this question will really come to fruition. And there's a lot of time between 2023 season and 2026 season for all those players to kind of like wheel and deal and make concessions and not make concessions, because that of course also happens along the way, that things that we as fans aren't privy to show up. So
we'll see. No, it's true. And I think it kind of leads me into this next section, and I wanted to talk about Honda in particular a little bit. Last year I could understand why Red Bull were speaking with Porsche, because Honda, like they've done before, decided just to pack their toys and leave F1.
Right.
So Red Bull was forced to create their own Red Bull powertrain company to make engines, and they secured a deal that Honda would supply engine parts until 2025.
Right.
So, whether you like Red Bull or not, as Grace just mentioned, it's really planning and mapping out the future here. And you have to hand it to Red Bull. If you've been watching Formula One a while, you'll know that the debacle they went through with Renault, when Renault's engines were letting them down, and there was this big friction between Red Bull and Renault. And they said, that's it. We can't take it anymore. We're ditching Renault, and we're going to get a different engine supply. And there was only 4 engine makers in the sport, right? And so the problem was that Honda had gone with McLaren, and Mercedes and Ferrari said, no, we're not going to sell engines to you. So there was a cliff edge moment. Now, everybody, I say everybody, but a lot of fans that I read at the time were saying, oh, don't let the door hit you in the butt on the way out. You're missing the whole point there about, Red Bull. And I've been on my soapbox about that before. So imagine, if you will, then they get attached to Honda. They work with Honda to become a championship winning team.
Right.
And in the midst of winning titles, despite winning championships, Honda deems the brand equity and everything that they're getting from those championships pointless, and they decide to announce they're going to leave Formula One.
Right.
So now, what does Red Bull do? And I think what we saw a year or so ago is Red Bull said, you know what, the hell with it. We're done. We're done attaching our wagon, right? So they created Red Bull Powertrain Company to make engines. They secured a deal where Honda would keep supplying engine parts until 2025. This would give Red Bull time to create their own power unit, and Porsche at the time seemed like a good partner. But apparently the German maker wanted controlling interest in the team. And so the talks broke down because that's not what Red Bull wanted, and I don't blame them. Right. In the meantime, Honda announced, oh, yeah, we were just kidding about leaving Formula One.
We're back.
They made application to reapply to enter as a manufacturer in 2026.
Right.
So the stupid part of my brain thought, well, okay, now see, this works out then. It works out well for Red Bull because now they can just continue with Honda. They don't have to do the deal with Porsche because Honda's coming back, and they've had so much success together already. This will be great. That's not what happened. Instead, Red Bull said that they're making their own engine.
Right.
And Ford made a good partner with limited demands on Red Bull to assist them with their engine making, and with, in particular, the EV tech needed, right? And so I thought, no, that's interesting. So then the effervescent Jonathan Noble over at Motorsport said that Christian Horner described the initial discussion with Honda as turning out to be too complicated, whereas Ford were not. He said that applying to the FIA to be a manufacturer in F1, as Honda has now done again, for 2026 was no guarantee that they would actually make it to the grid in 2026.
That is correct.
Right? Now, you can read that at face value, but my tinfoil hat suggests that Red Bull spent tens of millions of dollars trying to create a powertrain division because the Honda announcement that they were leaving F1, and in another panic that put Red Bull in another panic situation over engines. And they, like they had with Renault, and they don't, to be honest with you, I don't know that they actually trust Honda at this point, that they'll either make it back to the grid in 2026, or B, that they won't just up and leave them in the lurch again.
Right. That's just the nature of the beast. It's not necessarily like Honda's a bunch of jerk faces and need to get together, right?
I'm not saying that did the same thing.
Right. I'm not saying
Toyota.
That you're saying that. I'm just saying that that's the nature of this kind of an agreement. When you're just doing the engine supplier, that can happen. So while the focus of the story is on Honda, this has happened before with other manufacturers and will happen again, right?
Yes.
So that's all I was trying to say. I wasn't trying to say you were implying that.
No. And you're absolutely right. Toyota, BMW, this has happened before.
Just the nature of their business and its relationship to Formula One.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't make them necessarily bad. I would say that Honda's kind of a repeat performer, but I think,
I think
Honda, I've always said Honda's just very fickle in its involvement in F1. It's just been very fickle. And they can just in and out, and they're fine with that. Whereas other manufacturers, they've come in and they've left. BMW is a good example. Toyota is a good example.
I think because Honda really likes the idea of Formula One. Like they feel like they should be here, right?
Yeah,
like this is, you know what I mean? So I think it's for them, it's like a heartstrings decision more than a business decision, which for BMW, well, this isn't working for us. We're out and we're not coming back. Whereas Honda's like, oh, but we love them.
Yeah. And let's be honest, one of the best races on the entire calendar is the Japanese Grand Prix.
So absolutely. So I think there's something with Honda that is different than all those other manufacturers that we mentioned, because they just feel it in their soul that they should be a part of Formula One, and it leads them to be this fickle is the word I used as well.
Yeah, it is fickle. And now Red Bull, I think in my mind, are done relying on engine partners. They're going to make their own engine, and they just needed a technical partner to fill the gaps as they get their sea legs with their new engines. And
they can build these 5 parts, and they just need somebody to build the 6th part, and they found it.
Yeah, that's right. And they found somebody who was willing to do it with no big demands of ownership of the team and all that kind of stuff.
Or just more than happy, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it does make sense. To be honest, Horner's comment, in my mind, is a bit of an admission that they can't really exactly trust Honda that much.
No.
They can't trust they'll be there in 2026. And given their abrupt departure from F1 again, I don't blame him. And I think the biggest question really right now isn't why they do Ford, why wouldn't they do Honda, what was up with Porsche. These are all great talking points and interesting to know. But in my mind, the biggest question right now is, can Red Bull make an engine as well as Mercedes, Ferrari, Honda, and Renault? You mentioned a little while ago.
Yes, that's right. That's and so I think that all these other, like when you watch the race video, it's like, this long, and like this is a visual, but this part of it is just like, here's a conspiracy theory. Now here's the part you really should be paying attention to, kids, right? Like, which again, isn't the like fun, juicy part of the story, but this makes sense. And I think, putting my strong dislike of Red Bull aside and viewing this as, a person who's watched the sport for some amount of time, I don't know how you could. I don't know. I mean, I've only been watching through it since 2000. I'm like, Honda. I even said that on our New Year's resolution shows. Yeah. Honda, get it together, make a decision, be in, be out, just pick something, right? So I think it's very smart. That's why I'm saying I think it's smart on Red Bull's part. And then I also think what Red Bull does well, much again to my chagrin, is they're good at trying to find the boundaries of those vague rules, right? I often explain that it's like having a toddler, right? A whole part of a toddler is trying to find its boundaries to itself. So it's always trying to push a parent or any adult figure, right, into like, when you say I can't leave this table without finishing my dinner, what exactly does that mean? And they'll wait you out because they're trying to figure out, 20 minutes. That's what that boundary is, right?
Right.
So that's all of teenagers do the same thing, right? Like it's all about trying to find the boundaries of yourself. So that's always what race teams are doing because the rules are written vague and on purpose. And so you always have to try to find what those are. And conversely, the other teams are always trying to do the like, I'm just saying that I'd like to try, my friend does this thing. Do you think I could do this thing, mom and dad? And then they just wait to see what mom and dad says. And then when the FIA says, no, that's banned, they're like, oh, well, you might want to tell Ferrari next door that they can't do that anymore, right? There's sort of this back and forth way of how those boundaries get defined in the rules because they're vague on purpose.
Yeah, and I think the point also I would add to that is that, Christian and the team and his leadership team would have been very aware.
Oh, yeah.
Even when the regulations for 2026 were being put together and first initial summary, positioning and those kind of things, they would have been aware that there was an allotment for development for new manufacturers coming. They knew that. And so they were very cunning in saying, oh, Honda, you're leaving again? Oh, okay. You know what? I've had enough of this crap. We're just going to... They invested tens of millions of dollars in this, folks. They poached a lot of great engineers from Mercedes. So they're for real on this. And they're done leaving the future of their team in the hands of a third-party manufacturer like Mercedes, Ferrari, or Honda, or whatever, or Renault.
Right.
And so more power to them as long as they can build an engine that can keep up. Because they're in the very nascent era of Red Bull powertrains. Ferrari's been making engines forever, right? So is Mercedes, so is Renault, right? And Honda. So the amount of resources and just granular knowledge, the tribal knowledge that these companies know about making engines is quite honestly astounding, right? And that's what Red Bull, they're a plucky energy drink team that's going to try to make a Formula One engine that can compete with Mercedes and Ferrari.
If they can do it though,
oh my gosh, it's
I
huge.
Just think that is huge.
It is huge. And even if you hate Red Bull, you're going to say, hey, well done.
That's right. That's exactly how I feel. Like if in 2026 they are able to pull this off, right? Like hat tip, good job. Right? Like I'm at awe. Like it's a pretty big thing that they're trying to do.
It really is. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on that team, on Christian, the entire executive management team and investors. Yeah. A lot of pressure.
So I just think, and I think too, I don't know how old Christian Horner is. I know that he was very young when he started as the team principal, right? But
is he late 40s?
Yeah.
Early 50s?
Yeah. So he's still pretty young. Mm-hmm. But because that's always the thing with any movement, right? Or any company is like, what is it like after Steve Jobs dies? What is what does Tim Apple look like? Right. So that next leader after your big leader always is going to be interesting. But I don't see Christian Horner going anywhere for another 20 years, knock on wood or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So the Lord's willing, he's still going to keep being there. So there's still a ways off from that sort of like big transition to the second team leader. This has all been done on Christian Horner's watch. Not to say that he's the only person, but I don't know. Once again, that's a pretty big hat tip to a team that, it's pretty impressive.
It is. Yeah.
Whether I like them or not.
No, it is. I mean, you gotta respect it,
For sure.
Let's see. Let's talk about the greed in Formula One. Not that there's any of that.
This is like the most like Formula One ethos of podcasts. Like, what is Formula One all about, Todd? Please tell me.
It's about greed.
Greed,
for lack of a better term, is good. It's like going all Gordon Gekko.
I was going to say, thank you, Gordon Gekko. Yes.
Right. So let's talk about greed here. So you'll recall that Michael Andretti said the teams, other than McLaren or Alpine, were just greedy. And that's why they don't want his team to join F1 as the 11th team, because they don't want to dilute the prize money fund. Now, this is, he was pretty vocal, getting a little chippy.
What, Michael Andretti, vocal?
Yeah.
What?
Getting a little punchy in the press about nobody taking him and Cadillac serious, right? And the situation was compounded when the FIA and Eddie Everywhere over there, Mohammed bin Salim, when he and the FIA had a full-throated endorsement of Andretti's idea of joining F1. And they even opened up a new round of applications from teams who might be interested in joining F1, right? Now, according to F1 boss Stefano Domenicali, who was fresh right off of stiff-arming Red Bull at their launch,
I'm not here.
Yeah.
Me? Here. What? Oh, I don't know. Domenicali, that's not me.
Domenico, no. According to him, he told Sky's F1's Martin Brundle that calling teams greedy was not a good move on Michael's part. He said, quote, "First of all, we're very welcoming of everyone that is bringing value to the racing. I think we need to respect everyone. There are teams like Mario and Michael Andretti being very vocal about their will to enter Formula One. But in my view, it is not smart to say that teams are greedy. There are others that are much less vocal that would like to come into Formula One. So there is a process to respect, and we will make sure together with the FIA that the process will be respected," end quote.
Respect the process.
Respect the process. You don't come in here and start slinging poop, dude.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
I'm Stefano Domenicali.
You got to come and kiss the ring.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's what he said. Now, whether it's greedy or not, the reality is they aren't they're not jazzed about diluting the prize fund. I mean, let's just be honest.
Who would be?
No, nobody.
Right.
Nobody would be. And they're demanding that the existing teams in Formula One, they're now demanding that any new team needs to prove that they're going to bring value to Formula One and make the pie bigger. Now, that's a new requirement for joining F1. I don't remember that requirement being there for HRT, Marussia, or Lotus when they joined, or even Haas, right?
Right, because that's in the new Concord agreement.
Exactly. So, and it would seem as that they do already, because the new team has to pay $200 million up front just to offset the dip in prize money. Now, a lot of teams argue that's not enough. It should be $500 million, and we could argue that, but that's what it is. In fact, Haas F1's Gunther came out this week and said that all 10 teams are financially stable and that the series doesn't need an 11th team, and there really isn't any upside to adding or another team joining Formula One. So he doubled down on what Domenicali said. Now, I mean, look, that's good for them, because no one ever demanded that Haas explain or prove how they would add value to the sport and make the pie bigger, right? And I think it's rich to say now Andretti has to prove that. Well, Gene Haas didn't, right? And, what could you argue the value that Gene Haas has added to Formula One? I don't know. I could make a case that they did, because Gunther Steiner was the runaway star in Drive to Survive season 1.
Right. Would there be Drive to Survive season 2 if it wasn't for Gunther? I don't know.
Right. So you could argue that they did,
if they put, how like on the front of the video games, right? Like, they always put whatever drivers, right, are the, like it's Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. They should Drive to Survive, if we still had physical media and you had like a DVD of Drive to Survive, it should just be Gunther's face on season 1. It should be like Gunther and Ricciardo. Like those are the two big storylines that come out of, Drive to Survive season 1. So
I know, definitly Dan.
Netflix are real bunch, sound like.
Yeah, I think that would
so
be good.
I think that'll be interesting. So he's like, I've proven my value to this sport.
Yeah.
These guys wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. Right?
I'm the one that brought all this. Yeah.
Yes.
And, to me, to be honest with you, it does seem like it's a case of it's very much becoming a case of, I can have mine, but you can't have yours, Right. And perhaps this is what the FIA was trying to remove by opening up the application process. It's one thing for all of those teams to be, lucky enough to have teams in Formula One. There's only 10 teams, so everybody gets several million. And so they all get theirs, but nobody else can come in and they can't have theirs.
No, for sure not. And and I think so I do think prize money is part of it, but I think you really kind of have to look at so we know, usually we don't know what's in the Concord Agreement, but it was leaked. So we do know more about what's in the Concord Agreement, but we don't necessarily know what concessions were made to get to this point. What sort of like backroom dealings were like, fine, I'll sign to this, but in the next step, we're going to do this, right? That stuff we don't know about. So, there's some leverage that kind of like Haas is like, well, I didn't agree to that, or I didn't have to live with that, or these kind of different things, these different machinations, if you will, whether the team was a part of the Concord Agreement when it was signed or not. But I think it is also, so I think two things are important. One is that teams in F1 it isn't like the NFL. They aren't franchises. They don't work together, right?
Right.
They aren't revenue sharing, they're revenue competing.
Yeah.
Right. So they are only in any form of agreement because of the Concord Agreement or something similar. That is the only reason that those 10 people work together. So not only do you have the FIA and Liberty Media and the teams, but you actually have all of those teams invested in their own interests. So it's actually like 12 entities that you would have to look at, sort of like, what do they have to win and lose from somebody like Andretti or somebody else joining the team? But it makes sense that the FIA in some ways is trying to get, like Formula One is trying to get its head around the, like, you don't decide teams.
Yeah, right.
I decide, right? Yep. And you all need to simmer down, because if we're going to have another team, it'll be because we've done something. Calm down, right? And then you can see where the teams are going, but it's our money you're cutting into. So we get some say, right? And so you can see how, and then of course it's all Liberty Media's money. So anytime, the teams are always going to try to get more revenue from Liberty Media, and Liberty Media is going to be trying to like cut them less. So
right.
There's always this sort of play, but I think to just call it greedy is just Michael Andretti just trying to catch some headlines, right? Because just saying, well, they're all being very reasonable about this, and I can't wait until Dominicali reads our application. That nobody cares about that. That's not getting you any headlines.
No.
And all Andretti can do at this point is keep being on the front page of the Washington Post, right? Like all he can do is keep being in your ear about, hey, don't forget about me. Hey, remember that hoop you told me to jump through? Here it is. Oh, you need me to jump through another one? Oh, I did that too, right? Like that's all he can do. So he has to keep kind of generating this buzz, which he can do with his name in a way that anybody other, who knows if there's really other applicants or not, right? Like it could be Stefano Dominicali Jr. That's I don't know that there is a Dominicali Jr., but it could just be something like that, like Bob down the street.
My neighbor's interested.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So who knows who these other teams might be?
Yeah.
But of course, the only leverage that Andretti has is to keep his name out there, and of course the teams are like, slow your roll, and and Dominicali's gonna say, we're in charge.
Yeah.
So I just think that's interesting to kind of break down how these all things work, and then the Concord Agreement, and how that's the only thing that really kind of like is what glues any of this together, because they have no interest otherwise.
Yeah, it is
in working together.
It is interesting, and I think there is an element of just keeping his name and his effort out there. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, it's like the Michael Andretti equivalent of wearing the Sam Smith black balloon outfit at the Brit Awards. It's kind of his thing. Which I think Michael ought to maybe think about getting that outfit. I think he'd look good in the paddock in that.
Oh my goodness. That visual, somebody with some like cut and paste skills. That
would be good.
Drop that head right on there, like they do on the magazines or whatever when they sign a new driver, and that always creeps me out. That they'll just like, put somebody's Nick DeVries's head on Pierre Gasly's body, and you're like, what? Yeah. That's the wrong person.
Back in the 90s, the F1
they do that all the time.
Would do that all the time. Remember, they'd have like, could so-and-so be, going to Ferrari, and they'd have Schumacher's body, but that they'd Photoshop like Kimi's head on it, and it was like,
please don't do that.
That's weird.
It's very weird. Don't do that.
So speaking of Haas launched their car this week. Here's how they did it. They launched it with social media posts showing renderings of their new livery. And then they trotted the car out for a little bit of track time for a filming day, and that's it. So the VF23 is a new livery with more black to match their MoneyGram sponsor colors, and looks a little less bulky and a little more maybe trim at the nose than before. But let's be honest, Grace, it has key features that look a lot like last year's Ferrari, if I'm honest.
It's like Tracing Point. Surprise.
And if you were looking for a low or no budget way to launch a car, you just saw it.
That's genius. I you know what I mean? Like, I like the idea of leaning into, this is a joke. We all know it's a joke, so we're just going to lean into the joke. Which maybe that's Haas's brand. Like, as much as we talk about Red Bull used to be the fun team, and now they're kind of like the bad guy team, right? So, look at that. See, now, any of you that are listening and not watching, stop, go watch, and then go back to listening. Oh, look at the poopy dog. We're just having a dog break. I mean, you guys get to see my cats all the time. We never get to see Todd's dog, so.
Sorry, that was Bryn. She just barged into my office.
She does.
So
anyway, no, I totally lost my train of thought, but that's okay. I was distracted. That's what happens.
It happens to
goes up, mine went blank. It happens at work too. Somebody's like kid toddles into their Zoom video, and it's like, I don't know, what were we talking about? Your kid was so cute. That was way better than whatever we were doing here. So their car launches, but I think that I get it. They were there for the sponsors. They're still for the sponsors. That's the whole reason why you have a car launch, is to like glad hand the sponsors. But It used to be fun for us to watch as fans, and you used to learn something. Well, now we get none of that. And so, I mean, they're just really, really kind of boring. But I am excited because now it's once again talking about Formula One being not any given Sunday, but any given year. Season 2, season 3 of a rule change is when you really start watching, because that's when the cars are going to start. You're going to see where they are the same, right? Like, so we're going to see more zero side pod concepts coming out. What are we going to, what are they going to kind of like mimic
in plates
from each other?
Start to morph into very similar in plates.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. And so I think that's where this is what is more disappointing to me, because of course there was some showmanship to last season's car launches because it was a new rules, look at this. But I'm like, now's when I want to see them. And I'm going to have the same problem next season, because that's what I really want to see what your car looks like. Because now's where we're going to see the evolution and this, I don't know, there's some word, right, where they all just kind of like sort of meld into what has worked the best for everybody. Because that first season, you're kind of like, oh, what do we got going on? So
yeah, right.
I'm looking forward to seeing what the cars in Ernest, I don't know why I added a syllable, in Ernest are going to look like.
Yeah, right.
In testing, and then the first race. So I'm gonna say
the first race. The first race weekend's always the telltale, because that's when usually everybody's got their kit. But and because these are now we just came out with the big regulations yesterday or last year, which was the huge change, right? And so now, legitimately, you'd be thinking, okay, well, now we're going to have these evolutionary steps all the way to 2026 when the new PU goes in,
right? So,
and when the new PU goes in, then it's an issue because it's a new engine, new weight and weight distribution, and it impacts the chassis, and it'll be very interesting to see. But those evolutionary steps are always interesting to look at.
So we'll see.
Yeah. So, and then in final news this week, the FIA says that Eddie Everywhere is stepping back. They say that it's always been the plan of the FIA, but Eddie Everywhere, or Mohammed bin Sulayem, is going to step back from the day-to-day operations of F1 and hand that over to Nicholas Tambazzi. And, okay, look, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here, because I do recall him talking about a new organization or a new structure early on in his presidency. I do remember that. So I give him a benefit of the doubt. But I do find the timing uniquely coincidental, given the amount of friction he's causing with F1, the teams, and the drivers of late. I think it's a convenient or coincidental time for him to take a step back.
You're right. The benefit of the doubt is this was something that always planned, and they just moved the timeline up, right?
Yeah. But, you're right. It's probably always planned, but we just moved it ahead in the Gantt chart.
Yeah, right. Like, we're going to do this sooner. Also, I think that you should always refer to Nicholas Tambazzi by his full name, which is single seat director. Excuse me, that would be single seat director.
Single seat director, Nicholas Tambazzi. Yeah.
Because I think that's the best title on an org chart ever. Single seater director. Oh, yeah. Your car has 3 seats. I'm not in this. I can't. I have no jurisdiction. That somebody else is in charge of 2 seats and 3 seats. Yeah. I don't know. I only do the 1-seaters.
just the single seat.
That's it. That's all I do.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, speaking of names, I also think the new racing representative, they called him, of Alfa Romeo Sauber, he's got a wonderful name, Aluni Bravi.
Ooh.
Almost sounds like a really high-end spa.
Oh, it does. Or like a nice restaurant or something.
Yeah. Oh, have you guys eaten at Aluni Bravi?
That's really good.
Oh my gosh, their tortellini is incredible.
I was just wait until you try it. Definitely, right. Wait till you try the ravioli. Oh my gosh, I can't speak.
It's Aluni Bravi.
Yeah, that is good. That's good.
It's almost like a Jean Nate commercial.
Yeah, it's going somewhere. That guy.
It is. Oh well. Good luck, Eddie. We wish you the best.
How long is his presidency? Like 8 years or something? He'll figure it out.
I don't know. He'll figure it out. I still think he's at risk. I'm sorry, but we'll see. Maybe of hiding in the closet in the FIA now and sitting in the back.
Yeah,
they're going to give him one of those big, 64 count crayon box with the built-in sharpener, and they give him the F1 coloring books, and they'll put him in some little office in the FIA, and then they'll come in and have him sign these very important documents, and then they'll walk out and throw him in the trash, and then Nicholas will take over. Maybe they can just placate him and
he just
make
needs
him
a little
good for the next 2 or 3 years, and then see the back of him. Or I think a guy like him, who was literally overseeing just about everything, including the post-race weigh-in of the drivers. I'm thinking a guy like that's going to be hard. He's going to be a hard dog to keep under the porch. He really is.
I mean, maybe they've just convinced him that like the best for his optics is to just lay low for a little bit, right?
Just shut up. Go sit down over there, okay?
Just take a long vacation for like 4 weeks. Calm down. Don't say anything.
Don't tweet anything.
Right. Let this blow over, and then we'll reassess at the beginning of the season, right? So.
Yeah. And then Paul sent you and I a video of his big moment in driving a Formula One car. It was a Renault, and he was racing like a road car off the line. And the light goes off, and he floors it. He's got all this wheel spin, and he starts going, and he pulls ahead, and then he switches gears, and he still has wheel spin, and he gives it more gas and just flips into the wall immediately.
Right.
And I thought, gosh, what a stunning visual representation of his time at the FIA, so far.
It really is just, things are going bad. Apply more gas,
It's like, Eddie, you got wheel spin in your presidency, all right? Let off the gas right now.
Right.
All right?
That's fine. You can always do that. It'll still be here tomorrow. Just ease up a little bit.
Don't bend it. Don't bend your career here, It's weird.
Right.
Anyway, all right. Let's do some Albin's Cats. Oh boy, it's time for Albin's Cats. Grace, hit me. What do you got this week?
So I got a couple stories, because of course I do. First, I know that we had a little chat online on the Twitterverse about Hell's Kitchen, but I did want to bring it up this weekend since I didn't bring it up last week because Paul was on it. I don't think Paul watches Hell's Kitchen, so we saw the season finale, and I think we all agreed that it was the right choice. So,
yay, Alex! Way to go! Yeah, I think it was the right choice.
I do feel bad that he now has to live in Atlantic City. So
right. Yeah.
Although
I think Daphne did a great job.
Oh,
She was a great cook and all that. She's really young, and I think Alex, having owned his own restaurant, would be able to hit the ground running.
I do too. And maybe it'll be a shining highlight of Atlantic City.
Maybe.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But that's not a town I'd want to live in, and so. Good luck, as opposed to like Vegas or, LA or New York or Paris or the other places, England, where he has restaurants, right?
Yeah.
Atlantic City.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So it was great. I really enjoyed. I was gonna say I also loved the traipsing them through the different sized rooms because they know at any moment one of these rooms everybody's gonna be in there and they're gonna have to cook because that's what happens in every season, and you can see them. They're just like it's empty. And it's empty. Like that was great. Like that they just kept stringing them along like that. And then finally they believed it and they ate lunch and they were full. And then they're like, surprise, here's all the people. So nice job. And so I also wanted to know if you're going to watch Gordon Ramsay's new show, which premieres tonight after the Super Bowl that we saw.
Yes, I am going to watch that. Next Level Chef. Yeah, I am going to watch that. And I just managed to watch season 2 of Clarkson's Farm, which was good.
All right. That I haven't watched, but all right. I'll give the new show Next Level Chef. Next Level. Yeah, Last Man Standing is always coming up, but that's not it. Yeah. Next Level Chef. All right, I'll give it a watch.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what's going there. Yeah. I did also want to mention, now I feel obligated since this is Albin's Pets to now update anytime there is a new Albin's Pet in the family. So they just got a new dog, Otter. He's a border collie. So
I love border collies.
Yeah, but that's also, we were talking about the high energy dogs that you have. That is
one I was just holding. Yes, is a very, very close cousin to the border collie.
Yeah, right. So very, very high energy dog there as well. But I have enjoyed, of course, watching the dog cat interactions are always fun when you have a really high energy dog and cats.
Yeah,
the cats are just like, why are you here? Why do you exist?
Right.
So, There you go. They got a new dog.
That's awesome. I remember I've always loved Border Collies. This is probably my favorite dog. And the reason was because I was young. I was like 12, 13, I think. And I was helping a friend of mine, family owned a large farm, wheat fields and stuff like that, and sheep and cattle and stuff. And I was out helping them. And my buddy's dad had a couple Border Collies. And one was a little older, a little, veteran, and the other one was new. And I'd never seen it before. I was like 12 or 13, and we're standing out there, and they have the sheep all in chutes, right?
Right.
And they were running them through the chutes, and a lot of times the sheep get all jammed up in those chutes, right? And he did some sort of whistle, and this dog that was just sitting there by our feet just launches like a fur missile, runs right at the chute, jumps up on top of the sheep, runs all the way to the very front of the line on top of all the sheep, dives down in underneath the sheep, nips the heels of the one that's holding him up, and gets the whole line. Then he comes popping back out on top of the sheep and runs all the way back down to the top of the sheep. And as a 12-year-old boy, I just thought that was the coolest damn thing I had ever seen. I thought, my dog sits around and licks his privates. I mean, I can't imagine a dog doing that, right? And so I've always loved Border Collies, and then Australian Shepherds, of course. I have two, but
that's great. I could use those at work. I think we could all use somebody at work, right? There's always somebody that just needs a little nip at the heels to get their business going.
I'm surprised one of those like BBDO or one of those ad agencies hasn't come up with a Super Bowl commercial, The Office Border Collie.
Yeah, exactly.
Where a guy takes an office Border Collie and herds people into conference rooms on time for meetings, and and does that.
It's kind of like I had a friend that had a corgi, and so the corgi was always hurting us, right?
Yeah,
they are cute, right? Yeah. So like she had her kitchen had like a window pass, right? So I would stand in the living room so I wouldn't be in her way while she was cooking.
Yeah.
But it drove her corgi nuts because I wasn't in the same room. So eventually I was like, I'll just stand in the corner so I'm not in your way. We can solve a conversation and your dog's not freaking out because I'm not in the same space. So the
funny thing is so my older one is big for a mini. Yeah. He's actually oversized for a mini. And my younger one, the one that was just on the show here, is just barely a mini. She's almost a toy. So she's real little. But it's funny because growing up here in this last year with Bryn, the little one, what's funny is every time I try to get her to go outside, she'd like take off. And then the bigger one would go herd her and bring her to me so I could get the leash on. Now she's gotten old enough to where when I'm asking him to go out, she instantly starts to go and herd him, So now I sick them on each other to go herd each other. It's hilarious.
Go get your brother.
Go get your brother. Go get your sister. Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. So Otter, the Border Collie, has joined the family.
The Albin family. Yeah.
Otter Albin.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of vowels there.
Yeah, so he'll have to add a new sticker to his helmet, right?
Yes. Got to have Otter on there. Yes.
Yeah, got to have all the animals. So, and then this was a story that it's not quite no shit headlines, but I enjoyed the story very much. So this was carried in sportsillustrated.com, si.com. And the story is, so Stoffel Van Dorn, friend of the show, Todd's personal friend, Stoffel Van Dorn.
Kortrijk, right? Belgium, yes.
Yes, right. So Stoffel Van Dorn reaches out to his former McLaren, teammate, Fernando Alonso, and he says, hey, I really just wanted to congratulate Vettel on his career and his retirement and how much it is, but I don't have his number. Do you have his number? Alonso replies, I don't have his number. The only person who has his number is Lewis. So apparently Lewis Hamilton, of all people, is the only person that has Vettel's number on the grid. And so if you want to talk to Sebastian Vettel now that he's not at the races every week, got to go through Lewis because he's the only one that knows.
That's funny.
I just love that text message. It's such a human thing. Like, hey, Todd, do you have Paul's phone number? I don't have that. Mm-mm. I can't share that with you. I don't know what it is.
Paul, the only person that's got Paul's number is Lawrence.
That's right. That's right.
Martin,
None
Lawrence
of us
Stroll.
know. None of us know. So I just think that's it. So be nice to Lewis if you ever want to talk to Vettel. I wonder if Kimmy's not on the grid anymore, but I'm sure Kimmy probably has his number.
I bet Lewis has Kimmy's number. Maybe not.
I don't know.
Lawrence has Vettel's number. I guarantee you.
Yes. That. Yeah. And I'm sure that Kimmy for sure has Vettel's number.
I bet Christian Horner has Vettel's number.
Hey, Christian, how's it going? Sorry, I'm going through a ton of.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Wait, what's that? My kid just spilled something on the floor. I gotta go. Are your kids like 12?
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Good stuff. I like it. Are you ready for some no shit headlines?
I'm ready.
Okay, all right. First up, quote, F1 pundit Johnny Herbert snubbed by Channel 4 and BBC after Sky Sports axe.
Wow.
Now that's pretty brutal.
So he was not re-upped by Sky Sports / fired, went to BBC and they said no.
No. Isn't that amazing?
Well, he can come on this show.
Sky, I don't understand. I don't understand the whole thing. I get it. Different people, but yeah, anyway. So
I don't know.
Poor Johnny. I've met Johnny twice.
He's a nice guy.
He's a really nice guy. Mm-hmm. I don't always agree with everything he said.
Well, those are two different things.
Those are two different things, right?
Right.
I don't have to agree with everything he said. The very first time I met Johnny, the first race in Austin, I was in the paddock in behind the garages, and I went up to him and I said, "Johnny, you don't know me," and I said, "But I'm a big fan from Benetton days, and really appreciate your work and stuff." And he was floored. He couldn't have been nicer. He was, "Oh, thank you so much." He goes, and he said, "Well, are you in Formula One?" I said, "Well, I just have a blog and a podcast." Oh, that's awesome. He's just a super nice guy. And then I saw him like the year after that or whatever. And he, at the time, he, seemed like he remembered. Good to see you again. Yeah, that kind of thing. But super nice guy. I hate to see him not have a role. That's bad.
He's not, I'm surprised that nobody's picked him up. But I said, Johnny, if you'd like to join the Parc Fermé,
there you go.
The pay's not great, but we'd love to have you.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, and Johnny's in the intro,
That's right.
I am so annoyed. That's Johnny.
Yes.
So.
Yes, because I always think it's Michael Schumacher, but it's not.
It's not. It's Johnny. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it makes me sad, right? Like I really miss. I will miss not having him on Sky Sport.
Me too. He's fun. I always loved that. I like the little vignettes he did with Pink or whoever. It was fun.
Yeah.
Or Rachel. It was always fun. I don't know. Just Naomi just doesn't do it for me. I'm sorry. She's not a broadcaster, never driven Formula One. Just to be the driver expert, I'm having a hard time choking that down. And just, I don't know. Let's see. The next headline. Red Bull chief Helmut Marko still angry about incident over 25 years ago.
Of course he is. Of course.
I mean, if you were going to pick out a guy in the paddock that you thought had the proclivity to hold a grudge for 25 years, I'm pretty sure Helmut would have been the top of your list or right behind Franz Tost, but it would have been close.
And Damon Hill, but
I'm just saying, of course, yes.
I like the juxtaposition of these two stories next to each other. By the way, that's very nice. Like, oh, Johnny Herbert, he's so genuine. He's such a nice guy. And then there's Helmut Marko.
Yeah,
not so much.
Not so much. Yeah. No, okay. I love it. You're absolutely right. Damon Hill and his thing about. As a matter of fact, I've had some few people that have figured out where my TPF stories podcasts were. They're shorts that I do that take a second glance at the history of motorsport. And one of them, my very first one I did was Damon's bitterness about Schumacher and how really Schumacher was nowhere near his arch rival. And I don't know why Damon attached so much onto Michael because but anyway, you have to go listen to it. But you can go to the website and scroll down on the left-hand side. You'll see a series of 4 podcasts called TPF Stories. And you can
still think the Schumacher, I don't know, documentary eulogy that they did. What was that, a year ago?
Yeah.
I really want the outtakes from Damon Hill because Damon Hill has like 3 sentences in that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I really want to know how much did he have to say about Michael Schumacher for them to find that like snippet of information that they could use, right?
And they would always have these features, periodically, like whether it was on pre-race or some sort of, feature thing they would do, and we're going to talk about Michael Schumacher, so let's go get Damon Hill. It's like, why would you get Damon Hill to talk about Michael Schumacher?
No way.
I mean, I would much rather, and I think you'd be far better in hearing from Mika Hakkinen about Michael Schumacher. I think you'd be far better talking to Ross Braun about Michael Schumacher.
Right.
Hell, you'd be far better off going and reaching out to our friend Steve Matchett and talking about Michael Schumacher.
Right. He knew Michael.
Than you would Damon.
I don't know. I think that's just, sometimes things make it, and you're like, boy, somebody put that in like at the writer's level, and every editor just let it go.
Yeah, right.
And that writer was like, oh shit, that made it.
That made it. Like, yeah.
So it's the same sort of thing. Like somebody was like, ha ha ha, go get Damon Hill. Oh no, they actually got Damon Hill.
Now we got to talk to him. Yeah.
Oh no, that actually panned out. So So what is he mad about?
Oh, so
25 years later.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is your friend and mine, Jipham,
Juan
Pablo Montoya.
And I'm sure that Helmut Marko is also not the only person that has issues after 25 years at Juan Pablo Montoya.
Or as Paul Page would have called him, Juan Pablo.
Absolutely.
So apparently Montoya almost won the F3000 championship, but blew it on the last race. And Jipham said that he thinks Helmut's still mad at him because he thinks he threw it away purposely.
Why would? Okay, so first of all, why would anybody throw it away?
I don't
know. Second of all, have you met JPM? I mean, he's sort of like Russell Westbrook. Like, there's no like, I just threw it away. That's not really in his vocabulary, right? Like,
yeah, he's kind of a light switch,
Right. Like, I just don't see that doesn't fit with his narrative as I know it. That JPM would just be like, well, I don't feel like winning today.
No, I'm not name dropping, but I've spent quite a bit of time talking to Juan. And I can tell you that's not.
No, it's not. DNA. That's what I'm saying. Like he's never been. He's that guy that brings it to everything all the time.
All the time, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was impressed when I interviewed him. We were having a great conversation. I've shared this on the podcast before. We were having a great conversation about really technical parts around IndyCar, and the handlers kept trying to come and save him. Yeah. And let him bail out, and he kept shooing him away because he was having a great conversation, and we were really engaged, and really smart guy, very in tune.
Oh yeah, I like
the car and everything and the details.
I like JPM much more now than I ever did then.
Yeah.
So
I kind of like IndyCar JPM more than I did F1 JPM.
Yeah, maybe that's it, right? Like I just think now to watch interviews with him, I kind of have to. Maybe someday I'll get there with Michael Andretti, but not yet. But, there's like this part of me that's like, oh, Juan Pablo Montoya. But it's like now I'm like, oh, because like you said, right, he has a lot of experience. Like the way he breaks things down is really great to watch a video he does. And he's really personable. And it was just like, where was this 20 years ago, sir?
Yeah, he's great.
So I like him now.
Let's see. Next one is, this is a good one. Quote, It was exhausting. Lewis Hamilton's rivalry with Valtteri Bottas drove Mercedes star to the edge. Who's buying that?
Nobody. First of all,
are you serious? If Lewis said it was exhausting and Valtteri, Lewis, come on, dude.
Okay,
come on.
I think he's just trying. Okay, because first of all, I think if anything was exhausting, it was Nico Rosberg. But he's never going to give Nico Rosberg that satisfaction of saying that. Right. He's always going to say, Nico, whatever, we were fine. He's always going to downplay Nico Rosberg. But I think this is a way of upplaying Valtteri Bottas, because I think Lewis, now that they're not teammates anymore, again, I love the two of them on the grid are so much fun together now that they're not teammates. I think if anything, I think this is Lewis trying to push Bottas up in the same way he would never admit this about Nico Rosberg, because he just wants to always push that guy down.
Yeah, Nico is a far more fierce competitor and a headache for
Bottas
Lewis than Bottas was.
Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to me otherwise.
Bottas is a really nice guy and pretty amenable. And I thought Valtteri did a fabulous job at the car launch. I think the Alfa Romeo car launch is by far the best. I think. Yeah, I love mullet bucket hats. Yeah,
Alpha Bottas has been great. So I think this is Lewis Hamilton trying to like
big him up.
Yeah,
probably. Let's see. The next one I got is, quote, Incredible moment. Rally driver crashes after female fan flashes boobs during race, and his racer admits he was distracted.
What?
Where did that happen? Who? Hey, aren't you going so fast that you wouldn't really even notice that? Number one. And number two, what female fan decides to go out to a rally and flash your boobs at drivers as they go by? I mean, what? I'm going to assume alcohol it played a role in that, but
perhaps.
I don't know.
I also think, though, if it's not your driver,
maybe you're thinking, I do not want the Hyundais to win.
Right. Right. Those jerks.
Those jerks?
Woo, yeah.
Hyundai sucks. Woohoo! Yeah. There you go. All right.
But I agree. I mean, maybe it's when you're going so fast, things slow down. I don't know how.
Right. Yeah. Huh.
I don't know. Yeah.
C cup.
Right. I don't know. That is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Who knew? But I don't know. I'm sure it wasn't in Finland, or someplace cold. I'm sure it had to be some like Argentinian race rally or something like. Cold. No, because it's cold.
Yeah. Next one is Lewis Hamilton looks shredded ahead of new F1 season as Mercedes star trains to battle it out with Max Verstappen again on Sunday. So
do they take these headlines? On Google, there used to be that you could put things in and it would Snoop Doggify it for you. Do they just take normal headlines and that verb isn't catchy enough? Let's
if they've got to. I mean, these
shredded.
Headlines are. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton looks shredded. Yo, I'm shredded.
I mean,
really?
They're all.
He is in great shape.
Well, good shape. You know what I mean?
all of them are, yeah, but Lewis is ripped.
He is in good shape, right?
Yeah,
I just don't, and as they all are, but I just don't think he's more shredded. I don't know.
I think you're right. I think George is in great shape. Carlos, several of them are in really good shape.
Those are the only ones I follow. I don't know.
Lando.
Have I seen? I don't know that I've seen Lando shirtless.
Yeah, I don't know if I have either.
It's not like George. Again, that's the running joke, right? That George is always shirtless.
Always shirtless, yes. Yeah.
Right?
And Charles, he's always going around, sailing in the Mediterranean without a shirt on.
Yeah, right. Sunning himself.
Sunning.
I always making it look like it's accidental. I do like that. That's just I was just casually laying here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Sure you were. Yeah, this random shot.
Let's see. Next up, you're going to like this one. Next up, quote, Lance Stroll, a possible world champion, as Fernando Alonso goes on charm offensive. Now, I got to hand it to the publication to basically call out Alonso in this headline and saying, nice charm offensive, trying to suck up to the owner by saying that his son could be a world champion.
He's going to, I just think that he's going to say Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll will be friends until Fernando Alonso perceives that Lance Stroll is trying to kill him, like Esteban
Ocon. Or
right?
perceives that he's being put in a number 2 position.
Yes, that is not deserved.
Yeah. All hell break loose.
So I think, when we discussed it, the three of you, me, and Paul, it was they have those signs at construction places that are number of days since lost time accident.
Yeah, right.
That's what that we should have hanging here, number of days until Alonso loses it with Stroll.
Right.
I don't think it's very long.
I don't think so either. I could actually hear, sometime by the end of the season, him going,
"No more radio, the rest of the race."
I could hear
That's right.
that.
I can't wait though to see their unboxed videos together. Those are going to be super awkward.
Yeah. Well, Lance is just kind of awkward in general.
Yeah. I mean, again, as we saw, if Vettel can't make your unboxed videos look fun and charming.
Yeah, you'd think Vettel could get Lance to loosen up a little, that kind of thing. Lance just seems very tense.
Because I always think that for as much as we talk about Alonso can take a car and get 3 more grid positions out of it than anybody else can, that's what Vettel does for humans. Yeah. He can get 3 more bits of unboxed joy out of a person. He made Kimi Räikkönen seem enjoyable to watch in unboxed videos. Right. Lance, he couldn't do it. So there's really no hope.
And forget it if you're trying to be on a video with him because you don't have his mobile number.
Right, with Vettel. No, he's not helping anybody else out anymore. He's done.
Done.
Just Lewis.
Done. Let's see. Finally, I got this headline. Toast. Tsunoda must do better job this year in F1. So Franz Toast is quoted as saying, Tsunoda must do better job this year in F1. And my question is, then why would you have signed him if you feel that way already?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the season hasn't started, and you're already riding him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't quite get it.
I don't know. Whatever you were doing last year did not work, so.
I think there was room for improvement there.
So I'm a big fan of Yuki, but get it together, man.
The Ukester.
But that is, you're right. This is preseason. Again, going back to football, right? Like I always joke that the Washington football team fans are so hopeful in the preseason, right? Like everything is possible. This is a year they're going to the Super Bowl, don't you know, right? And then the first game happens and it's like, it's not. But this is preseason talk. This should be when you're playing up your guys. This is the great thing they're doing. And boy, we're going to be amazing this year and can't wait to see how great the car is. So I'm agreeing with you that if Franz Tost is already in the preseason, the nicest thing you can come up with is you better pick it up, buddy.
Yeah. Why
this
even
isn't looking so
him?
great. Right.
I know. It's silly.
It's not
anyway. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. That's what we think about the news. You tell us what you think about the news. You can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion with us, as always. Just decorum, civility. If you like the podcast, you can go over to Apple iTunes and give us a good rating. Give us some love over there. That's always appreciated. And if you really like the podcast, well, then you could join our amazing Patreon supporters over at Patreon, because we could not and would not do this podcast if it weren't for our incredible Patreon supporters. Thank you so much. You can go to our website. At the very bottom left is a link, or at the top on the right-hand side says support us. Click on that. It'll take you to our Patreon page, and you can join for as little as $1 a month. And let's see, in other closing statements, I think that's it. I think until we come back next week and do this all over again, I'm sure we'll have a couple more launches to talk about and a lot more, but stay tuned for that, and we will be back next week to do it all over again. Until that time, this is Todd, aka Negative Camper, saying so long, Grace.
Go Rihanna.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.